Hi, we are here at the One Button studio at Arizona State University, the Tempe campus. My name is Daniel Fischer. I arrived here at this campus 1.5 years ago. Coming from Europe. I've been trained as a primary and secondary school teacher, and I did my PhD in sustainability science because I became interested in the intersection of education, learning, and sustainability. And I have the assistant professorship position here at the School of Sustainability for Sustainability Education. It was about a year ago that we were able to recruit a new postdoc for our National Sustainability Teachers Academy, and we were intentionally looking for someone who has a background that can complement our perspective, and we were lucky to recruit Dr. Carlos Casanova, who has his expertise is in social justice education.
Thank you, Daniel. As Daniel just mentioned, my name is Carlos Casanova. I just recently finished my PhD in education with the focus on social and cultural studies and with the emphasis in social justice education. I've been trained in sociology, and I focus on Latinx youth community engagement, social activism, and pedagogy.
Sustainability has become a powerful idea to describe a desirable future trajectory for global development. It describes the idea of meeting today's generation's needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Sustainability is basically concerned with outer planetary boundaries and the stability of our planetary living systems, and with ensuring minimum standards in terms of human development that allow all human beings to meet their needs. Sustainability has also been received in the education sector, and sustainability education, or education for sustainable development, is the main educational field that is trying to ensure that learners have the necessary skills and capacities to actively contribute to a sustainable development. Current research shows, however, that most learners in sustainability education associate sustainability mainly and predominantly with the ecological and the environmental dimension. So they think that it's about protecting and conserving natural resources, for example. This is somewhat problematic, given that sustainability has at its core the very idea of inter- and intergenerational justice to allow all human beings today and in the future to meet their own needs. In the educational field, it is social justice education that is exactly concerned with these kinds of questions. To explore potential contributions of social justice education, we engaged in a structured and systematic conversation between our two fields. We used testimonials and philosophical hermeneutics as an approach to identify key concepts, pedagogies, and methodologies in social justice education and sustainability education. The approach we took helped us to identify similarities, but also nuanced differences in between the two fields. Some of the most striking ones we will talk about now. We looked at ideas that that both fields can basically connect to, but that may have slightly different meanings in each field. On the level of concepts, we identified the idea of social change and transformation to be such concept that resonates and features strongly and prominently in both fields, but that each field has a unique kind of view on.
Right.
In my field, sustainability education, social change is strongly linked to the idea of building individuals' capacity to contribute to positive change towards sustainability. And with that comes the idea of the endorsement and the embracement of the education system as being able to create this positive change towards sustainable development. And I think this is somewhat different in your field.
Yeah, with the social justice education, we would look at social change as similar to what Daniel said with the individual change, but our focus and our main area that we tend to say that we need to change the institutions and transform and change the education system, and also challenge these power dynamics, power, privilege, and oppression that manifest within these institutions. So it's not only individual change, it's changing the structure and the policies and practices and procedures within these spaces. And we also look at education as not only empowering, but also as this oppressive institution.
Right.
And so our next area that we focused on was pedagogy. And within the social justice education world, the objective of the pedagogy that we use is we aim for critical consciousness of the participants or the students. And critical consciousness for us would mean reflection on your lived experiences and also action. So there's these two components that go on. The approach that we tend to use is action-oriented, and in particular we use youth participatory action research. This approach is where the learners, the students, are engaged in learning, collecting data, analyzing data on an issue that they're directly interested in, that's directly impacted them. And we tend to focus, again, if we're focused on education, so some of the issues within the schooling, such as the curriculum, and that's an area that young people will study and explore. And in addition to that, with this Y part, we talk about power dynamics. We focus on injustice, oppression, privilege, and we interrogate these concepts so the young people are exploring them and being able to understand how these play out in their everyday experiences. And in addition to that, with the social justice approach, with pedagogy, we tend to aim to work with students who have been historically marginalized in what we would call like low-income neighborhoods, under-resourced schools, LGBTQ students, undocumented students. So that's the population that we aim to work with.
So for the field of sustainability education, echoing Carlos' 3 steps, I would say that the main learning objective that we found in the literature that we assigned each other and the testimonials we wrote was that in sustainability education we focus on the idea of competence as a key learning objective. And maybe what is an important distinction to make here is that it has been controversial ever since if competence should also include a willingness to act on the ability that this is reflected in this competence. So being able to do something and being willing to do something have been discussed as 2 separate entities, and it is controversial whether or not we should in sustainability education also promote the willingness of learners to actually act sustainably. With regard to pedagogies and the approaches in pedagogies, my field of sustainability education also uses what Carlos described as action research or participatory action research. So this is a methodology that we use, a teaching approach that we use, but it's often framed in different terminology, and with that terminology comes a different emphasis. So we are talking a lot about real-world learning or transdisciplinary projects that we get engaged learners in. And the main difference is that in sustainability education, there is little consideration of the specific demographics of the learners, I would say, most broadly. So I'm not saying that we're ignorant of it, but it's not that there is a specific kind of learner that is determined by socio-demographic factors that sustainability education is targeting. And so the emphasis here is less, I would say, on engaging with oppression and societal structures as a context of learning, but more on the interpersonal and level, and fusing different disciplines and working together collectively with other stakeholders in the field to solve sustainability problems. So as the third and last area, we looked at different methodologies in our field. And for the field of sustainability education, we engaged with a reading by Justin Dillon and Ian Walls. And what they say is basically that we have a next to each other of different paradigms and ways and approaches to research in sustainability education. One they label as traditional empirical analytical research. Another one they label as interpretative research, and the third category they label as socially critical research. And I think it is fair to say that you can find research still, that article is 14 years old, but you can still find these 3 different paradigms in the field with maybe a stronger emphasis on empirically analytical works today. And the critique that Justin Dillon and Ian Walls express in their paper is that we need to be more reflective as researchers in our field of other types of research that are going on. And we need to better interact with each other to recognize kind of the limitations of our own approach. So their critique is that different methodologies are in place, but more in parallel rather than in an integrated way. And I think you could say that the majority of sustainability education research methodologies is focused on delivering to this objective of promoting individual capacity and competence, and that is to improve educational practice. So how can we improve teaching and learning processes so that students develop competence?
And within the social justice education literature, and what it tends to be a really important or key component of the research purpose is this concept of positionality. So we as researchers, we have to recognize who we are, such as like our identities that we hold, and the knowledge that we have and experiences that we've encountered, and how when we enter a research space, how that impacts and influences the research process. And also the research questions, the research, our objective of our research. And also another thing that we tend to focus on is with the research participants. They're not subjects, they're research participants. They're part of the process. And that's another thing that we focus and emphasize with social justice education. And within that, the way we collect data, we challenge validity. Some ways that we collect data is through storytelling, testimonials. And the objective or the purpose of social justice education research is to recognize the injustice that is going on within these institutions. And not only should we recognize them, but we have to engage in action to transform these oppressive institutions. If we don't, they continue to maintain and perpetuate the social injustice and imbalance that tends to maintain these power dynamics between social groups.
So we want to wrap this presentation up by providing some conclusions or lessons learned from our inquiry. I want to start with some more content-related conclusions and reflections. So our initial question was, what can we learn as sustainability educators from the field of social justice education to actually strengthen the social dimension and the engagement with social justice in sustainability education? So three main conclusions. There are three main conclusions that I would like to highlight. The first is that the field of social justice education has a very sophisticated and long-standing tradition in challenging aspects like power issues, oppression, questions of oppression, and actually barriers that individuals are facing when they are trying to meet their needs. Mm-hmm. And these barriers are not only individual barriers, but structural, systemic, social barriers. And I think engaging with this, with these, adopting some of these analytical perspectives can really help to strengthen this social dimension in sustainability education. The second aspect is the appreciation of the lived experience of the identities of the individual learners, of their basically the personal dimension that is playing a strong role in social justice education, and that I think helps to produce meaningful learning contexts for individuals. There's the critique in the field of sustainability education that some of the education that we are providing is still very science-oriented or science-heavy and disconnected from the personal experience. So I think this is a great way to learn and take this in from other fields such as social justice education. So the culturally appropriate and sensitive pedagogy, you could say. The final point is that what the field of social justice education, in my reading of it, does very prominently is to critically challenge the education system as per se for producing and reproducing socially unjust outcomes and transferring this or translating this to the cause of sustainability. Mm-hmm. We've seen major critique most recently on the current mainstream educational systems and how it's actually contributing to the crisis symptoms that we are facing, for example, in terms of climate change. So having and adopting and utilizing the critical perspectives that are deeply ingrained in this field of social justice education from the readings that I did through Carlos' assignments is something that could be very beneficial, I think, for collaboration between sustainable education practitioners and researchers and those from your field.
Mm-hmm. And to reflect on the process that we engaged in for this project that we worked on, Espino and Carrillo, both of them use this concept of sisterhood and brotherhood. And I think what we have come to realize and discover based on the work that we've done is there is this collective experiences that we encounter when we read other folks' research and literature from different fields. And we have to be open to what we think and like the knowledge that we hold, that we receive through our training. We have to be open to different perspectives, different ideas, different concepts, and look and see how those concepts and ideas can be used to strengthen fields such as sustainability for education and also social justice education. I mean, that's a field that also can benefit from the literature that's going on in education for sustainability. And another thing during this process that it's time consuming, and also what we do as researchers is we engage in dialogue with each other. We ask each other tough questions, we question each other's comments, and we come together and meet and have a discussion on some differences that we may have. And that what I think was a really important part of this process that we engaged in. And if you want to call it a strengthened brotherhood or collective consciousness, I feel like that has developed over the time that we've done this work together.
That's a nice final statement. So thank you for watching us.
Thank you.